Okay, hi there everyone. As promised, I'd decided to shoot another quick video. I've loosely assembled the quadcopter frame, and I've been sitting here, some music on and a can of beer for maybe hour and a half, with all the bits, trying to work out the best way of assembling this beast. Please take into account I've never built a quadcopter before, so any comments from anyone, greatly appreciated. If you can see any howling mistakes. So yeah, I've got the frame. So this is the front, apparently red first. And the rear, and the bottom base plate, just very loosely screwed together, no Loctite, anything like that, because I'm sure I'll be going through various iterations, but that's the basic setup. So harder than I thought, actually, because I've got obviously three or four main components. I've got the frame, clearly, the ESC controllers for the motors, battery, which is a major issue, and the flight controller, which is relatively trivial. Now on this particular frame, where's my pencil? Right, if you draw a line between the motor drives corner to corner and motor drives corner to corner, then the centre of gravity, or the central point of the model, is there, right in the centre, between these two holes and these two holes. So that is the line, that is the axis. So all the weight of the whole model has clearly got to be centred on that, in and around that point, fairly accurately. That's the centre of gravity of the model. Obviously, you've got all this space back here, which, oh yeah, looks like a great idea to put the battery, but then clearly the model's going to be hugely tail heavy. Admittedly, I haven't got a camera in the front at the moment, but excluding the camera weight, which is relatively small compared with that of the battery. I mean, the camera's a few hundred grams. I mean, a couple of hundred grams. The battery could be half a kilo. So yeah, putting the battery rack here is clearly not going to work. It's going to work to some extent with a camera on the front, because it will counterbalance it, but ignoring the camera for the moment, all the other components of the model are very, very light in comparison to the battery. So the battery's got to be centred on here. Otherwise, it seems to me, if the battery's too far forward or too far back, if it's too far back, the front motors are going to be having to try extremely hard, or if it's too far forward, the rear motors are going to have to be trying extremely hard. I mean, the flight controller will attempt to level it out, but I would have thought all the motors should be trying approximately equally as hard. So, okay, so I thought about putting, and I'm using this Q-brain. It's underneath here at the moment. Underneath this, I'm using this Q-brain ESC distribution 4-in-a-box type business, which, yeah, is a good idea because it keeps the weight towards the centre of the model. The downside is you've got to put it somewhere. Obviously, if you've got your switchers for the motors out here on the legs, you've moved the centre of gravity out, but which may or may not be a good thing. Don't really know. I would have thought it was better to keep it central. But the advantage of putting the ESCs out here is obviously there's plenty of room on the legs to mount them. With the Q-brain idea, you've got to put it somewhere. So anyway, without gabbling too much, what I've decided to do is I'm going to mount the Q-brain underneath. Oh, hang on, let's get it in the camera. So the Q-brain is going to be mounted underneath, which is great. It'll fit there nicely, not a problem. It's a little bit close to the ground, if you know what I mean. with the wiring and the signals wire. So what I'll probably do is I'll mount it here. Now at the moment I don't have a camera, so the whole model is sitting on its existing little legs, which doesn't provide a lot of clearance for the Q-brain. It's not a big problem. I'm planning on, I'll probably do is make a little aluminium skid pan, if you like, a bit like you'd have on the front of a car to protect things like the sump plug and all that business. So a little aluminium plate that'll just sit over the front and just protect this wiring, so that if it comes down a bit heavy it hits the skid pan rather than this. Ultimately, when I've got the camera fitted, then I'll have a larger skid mechanism on the base, so all this Q-brain business will be considerably further away from the ground, and it'll be the extended legs that take the shock rather than this thing. Anyway, by the by, it's going to go on the bottom. So that's that business. Now, building it from the bottom up, the next thing is battery. Now I could just plonk the battery in the centre like that, but I'm thinking, well, how am I going to get it in and how am I going to get it out easily? Because obviously I don't want just one battery that I have to charge in situ. I want to be able to take it out and possibly replace it with one or more batteries that I've already pre-charged. So the plan is, I've got this little well, basically it's a little project box. It's extremely tough, pretty much bomb-proof. And the plan is I'm going to mount that here. I'm going to cut a slot in the end, big enough to get this battery or any, they're all, within reason, roughly the same size and similar sort of weight. So I'll cut a slot in there. This battery fits in there with clearance. Obviously I haven't got the slot at the moment, but there'll be several good 5mm clearance. So there'll be a slot in the end, mount that there, and have foam cushioning on the end, and then I'm going to mount some thumb screws on the side, because there's quite a lot of clearance. Thumb screws on the side with 2 foam lined plates in here. Bear with me. The idea being, when that's mounted there, I can slide the battery into the box from the rear till it hits the foam cushioning, tighten up the thumb screws either side, and that will basically clamp the battery in situ and stop it sliding backwards or forwards or left or right. And when I want to change the battery, all I've got to do is undo the thumb screws from the side of the model and pull the battery out and slide it in. So basically I've got a lockable battery box. So that's the plan. Plan being the operative word. So that goes there, and it's already got mounting points, so that can screw to the base, and there's still plenty of room to get the top plate on. So that's the battery sorted, the Q-brain sorted. Then the top plate goes on. There we go. Okay, and I've got these little spring-mounted rubber buffers which were supplied with the frame, and this little piece of board also supplied with the frame that sits on the top of there. Flight controller, front first, sits on top of there, so it's got some cushioning. Right. GPS twig sits on the back, just behind the brains. Right, what have we got next? Yeah, the telemetry unit. Can't remember the name of it. Hang on, bear with me. 3DR telemetry unit. It was a blank PCB. I'm not very happy about a PCB just sitting out. Could get damp, moisture in the atmosphere, all that sort of business. So I've mounted it in a little box. It means I can't see the LEDs, but if that proves to be a problem, I'll move the LEDs to the outside of the box and link them across to the board. Not a problem. So there is the telemetry unit. So a second, fiddle. That's going to sit behind the GPS like that cause it weighs nothing, so it's not going to affect the centre of gravity. Well, it doesn't weigh nothing, but it weighs an insignificant amount. I mean, I can trim that out with a tiny movement of the battery and change the end stop on the battery. So that's the telemetry unit. So I think that sort of makes quite a nice arrangement. I'll be able to slide the battery in from the rear into its little box, which just sits about there. Tighten the little thumb screws up on the side to lock the battery in place. Telemetry unit, all good. There may be other little transmittery style modules that might be required at some point, but there's plenty of room back here. And to be quite honest, those type of modules, transmitters, you know, they weigh a few grams. They're not going to upset the balance. The big thing is obviously the Q brain is not heavy, but reasonably heavy. That has to sit central. The battery has got to sit central, otherwise it's going to be all over the shop. And then the flight controller has got to sit at the centre, at the centre of gravity, because obviously it's got motion sensing sensors, you know, this way, that way, up and down. So it needs to be at the, I suppose you would call it the roll pitch axis. Don't know. Maybe someone can correct me on that. Don't know. But I would have thought it's got to sit at the centre. Okay. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention is this Q brain module is basically a 25 amp. Sort of, I don't know what the frequency it runs at, probably a couple of hundred kilohertz maybe. Is a computer controlled 25 amp 4-way switch mode power supply. I don't think you want that anywhere near the sensors in this control module, because that's going to be very, very bad karma for the sensors. So the other advantage of mounting the Q brain underneath with the battery in the middle is that the battery is obviously a rather large lump of, you know, lithium polymer, and it's going to act as a electromagnetic barrier. I'm hoping. It seems to me it will probably act as a fairly good barrier between all the switching that's going on in the Q brain and the sensitive, you know, magnetometer and all that business which is going on in the flight controller. So that's the plan. That's the way I'm going to assemble it. Like I say, if a camera needs to go on the front, the camera's going to be slung underneath, potentially on a gimbal. So if that happens at some point in the future, this whole arrangement is going to be lifted on additional skids or additional landing gear. So yeah, there's another. I've got my little battery monitor as well, but that's again really, really light. I can pop that on the back here somewhere, and so that I can see the battery status from the rear of the model. And also I figured if I mounted the battery status monitor facing backwards at the rear of the monitor, I'll move it forward a bit. Battery status monitor facing backwards at the model, then it's quite bright, and I'm hoping that from the ground that display changing, showing all the battery voltages, will act as a point of reference. So if I, you know, so I'll be able to tell where the rear of the model is if I can't see the front red, the red. So I'll have the red arms at the front and this LED display going off at the back as a point of reference. So there we go. That's how far I've got so far. So I thought that was a bit gabbly, but making it up as I go along. Any comments or obvious howlers, then please feel free to let me know. I'd rather know now than later. Oh, the other thing I've done is I saw this on a website, and I apologise if the guy who's watching or did the website is watching, because I can't remember his name, but he basically plaited the Q brain wires, which makes them a lot neater and possibly more intolerant to noise. Don't know whether that is true or not, whether that works, but it certainly makes them neater. So I've just plaited them and then cable tied them, so they're not. I haven't got 4x3 wires wanging around all over the place. So, and then they'll just sit out underneath the motors mounted. Anyway, thanks for watching. Cheers.